Good evening, Wisconsin. Great evening, Wisconsin. Stealing that from a good friend of mine, Orlando. Shout out to him. He is a great guy to keep up with. He posts every day. It's all about motivating people, and that's something that stuck with me. Is the good morning, good evening, great evening. Much love to him. Shout out to everybody in Wisconsin for joining us this evening, or anywhere across the Midwest. Numbers have been on the rise, so appreciate the love across the Midwest. We've got a lot of allies, which is something I am thankful for when it comes to other states as well. Really excited for tonight's show. It's our first time having a couple guests at once. So hopefully, I don't know what you call like computer security. Hopefully, there's enough bandwidth out there for all of us. That's it. All right. I was looking at like the right term, and I think it's bandwidth. I hope we got enough bandwidth to make this thing rock because it'd be really interesting to have a few guests at one time, chop up a few different topics. Really looking forward to that. We have a couple guests that are going to be popping in and out or popping in a little late. Had a couple things pop up, which is completely understandable. Always like to start things out by thanking the sponsors of the show. Shout out to Higher Love. If you're in the UP, make sure you check those guys out. My go-to place in the UP, my go-to place in general. I like to run up there, get up there just about every weekend. They've got you covered in the UP. If you're looking across Wisconsin, we got Ignite Dispensary. Again, they're going to be in Hayward, Spooner. They're also going to be in Manitowoc, Milwaukee. They've got a pretty good hold on the state. And then we're also going to have some folks joining in the show that have some great options for you as well. So really excited again for tonight's show. I'm trying to hit share to see if I can do this correctly, multitasking, so watch out. I think it's going to work. All right. Boy, this is crazy, I tell you. 4 people waiting on deck. All right, let's do this. I think we're going to go I think I just can bring all you in. Okay, don't swear anymore, guys. I'm unmuting you before I bring you in. Ashley likes to swear in the green room, so we had to put up special rules for her. How's it going, everybody? Thank you for joining us.
Hey,
We've
guys.
got Ashley and Kelly on the bottom row from DNA Hemp. And then we've got Phil Anderson, the candidate for U.S. Senate, joining as well. And then we're going to have a couple lobbyists that'll be popping in and out. We got Jill here already. Hey, Jill, thanks for stopping by. Before we get started, does anyone have any concerns about how we're going to do this? Did you guys have any beefs we got to like squash before we start? I tried to handpick some folks I thought might get along, but now that you see who you're with in here, is everything kosher?
I got problems with all of you right now.
Well, it might be a long show in that case, but no. Appreciate you guys.
And you ain't one, Phil. Okay.
Fair enough. Thank you for joining us, guys. I got a great chance to get like a little roundtable scenario going here. Thought that'd be really fun and just a new twist on things. So let's see how it goes and let's chop it up, guys. Who do you guys have? Oh, I have the list. I got it. It's loading. This one I wanted to start. We had a few questions that we gathered over the weekend. We've got one about hemp farming. We've got what challenges do you face in the current legal landscape for hemp farming, such as testing and if it tests hot? I know we've probably touched on this in the past, but just so we got a chance to kind of chop up a few questions we get sent. What is it like kind of staying within that threshold? And is it something that you think could be done a little better as far as how it's currently set up, or is it a pretty solid system?
Sounds like you opened a can of worms, Bobby.
They call me the can opener.
Woo! Yeah, good news is it's easy to get a license, right? You just have to get your fingerprint. Can't be a felon. You can go into your local agency and get verified for that. And it's free through the USDA. The website for compliance is pretty user-friendly. They have video tutorials and things to help the less technologically inclined, get their harvest scheduled and the testing all in order online. So I think that has come a long way over the years compared to when it was through the Department of Agriculture in your local state to now, the USDA running it. But Who's regulating this show? I feel like sometimes it's just a numbers game with the 30 days testing and then you harvest. It's kind of like there's a lot of loose ends there.
Speaking of testing, look who joins the show. Dustin, what's going on, buddy?
Hey.
Dustin, take it away.
Dustin,
okay, catch me up.
Dustin.
We're just touching base on so we had a couple questions coming through. First one we started with that we got was just essentially the basics of testing to make sure that it's hemp that's being grown in Wisconsin, and if there was any like recommendations we had to maybe streamline that process, or just kind of talking about the ups and downs of that testing process. I would say you're the up part, Dustin. I get a lot of good feedback from folks that call you out, but what's it like for you? Is it pretty streamlined, a little hairy sometimes, or?
Yeah, so like everything, I'll be finding out like if any new updates and rules. So keep that in mind for our next event before we can start talking more in detail about how to get registered and signed up for testing. But as far as like the testing in general, there's always remediation, and there's the technology out there with farmers. At the end of the day, kind of compare it like alcohol. You go and make moonshine, and it has to be diluted to a certain value in order for it to be able to be put on the shelves. You understand what I mean by that?
Sure.
So the amount of remediation options out there will help protect your crops from being destroyed or composted. But yeah, I guess right now there's still the USDA still has their own lab. It's recommended, especially if you have your USDA paperwork and you're all signed up with the program and everything, because everything gets forwarded right to that portal that you sign into.
Sure.
And it's so much more user friendly, because when you go to, you could still go to third party and other, I shouldn't say third party, but other labs that are DEA certified, but they don't have the streamline with their paperwork. So there's a lot more paperwork, and it can take a lot longer to get the results back on their product that they're trying to test. And I'm hoping this year that the USDA will start allowing companies to send in samples of commercial ready products for testing as well. So I'm going to find out.
And when you say commercial ready, is that like it's as opposed to pre-harvest? You're talking like ready to be sold testing, or?
Yeah, I'm talking about stuff that's if you have a new product line coming out, right? Whatever, sure. Call it 1,000 milligram full spectrum tincture you want to brand and put out on the market. Having that product tested through the USDA would also help.
Sure.
And it'll keep things more fluid in the industry. And it will also show that Wisconsin knows their shit and get things done. And there's no, effing around with other companies to like try to figure shit out, because like there's so much chaos in the with that end of the market. You start from seed, then you gets grown into the ground or put into the ground and then grows, harvests. Okay, there's so many different steps if you want to get it onto the commercial market.
Right. And Phil, I don't know if I ever got a chance to, when we touched base, Phil, we talked about a lot of neat things and a lot of big things. Phil, have you had the chance to try intoxicating hemp from a legit place in Wisconsin? There's a lot of places out there that don't do it correctly, like gas stations and stuff, but have you messed around with any kind of like hemp-derived Delta-9 gummies or CBD across the state?
Yep, absolutely. My daughter works at
yeah, that's right,
at Knuckleheads here in Madison, the new location, and there's a dispensary right by my house.
Sure, that's right. I recall now. So just from your understanding on the consumer side of of there being potent products out there in Wisconsin that are legal right now from like just a political candidate standpoint. What would just be kind of firing from the hip? We're not going to beat you up by any means, but just firing from the hip, firing from the hemp. Get it? Firing from the hemp.
Yeah.
About hemp. How that was so bad. I'm practicing to be a dad, guys. Come on. All right, it's a dad. So just what would be kind of your take on, so right now it's the Wild West. There's no regulation. What would be like, you seem like a pretty limited government kind of guy. What is just an idea that you'd have to kind of bring to the table as far as that those kind of products are concerned?
Well, I think ideally, eventually, the industry is in a state where it's sort of self-regulating, and there's manufacturers, creators, marketers are incentivized to put the truth on their packaging and to measure things well, and so that the consumers know exactly what they're going to get without much or very little government involvement. The only government involvement in my ideal world would be if somebody did, practice fraud in a way that they were selling something and it wasn't safe or it wasn't what it said it would be, that there's the judicial system to correct that, but there's not as much regulation at the front end. But I think right now, as we transition to more and more products being legal in more and more places, that some regulation makes sense, at least in terms of testing and making sure that people know what they're getting, because actually that's one of the biggest barriers for people supporting things being legal or unregulated, is their fear of, there's obviously a big scare of fentanyl right now, and that's a legitimate thing, but people, the uneducated, and politically this is played up in terms of that arriving in cannabis. So any sort of thing that can happen now where the government is basically just dictating some standards in terms of how things arrive at the market in terms of their purity and their potency, I think is okay now, but eventually I'd like that to disappear.
Sure. I think that's a great take. And another question that we had here, kind of just talking real quick on testing regulation for hemp. Kelly, you are a pretty, well, I guess Kelly and Ashley, well, probably all you guys know a little more than me, but you guys are kind of the plant ladies and the farmer folk. When it comes to mushrooms, what can you tell us about regulation with mushrooms in the state of Wisconsin? Is that, I've been noticing more and more as I go to places, I get more and more people telling me to try this new mushroom thing, and I'm just still like a little sketch myself. I just hate mushrooms. Ever since I knew mushrooms are fungus back in biology class, I just have this issue with it. But aside from that, what is your guys' take on or understanding on it? Any kind of regulation around the mushroom realm, as far as like, can I go get legal psychedelic mushrooms? Is that a thing, or?
I don't think so.
No?
I'm not really versed in the psychedelic mushrooms, to be honest.
I think there's a couple states, Colorado, maybe Oregon.
Senator Agard had put a bill out
to try to legalize.
I never looked into it enough to remember the bill number.
Fair enough. Well, and maybe it's not
there's something out there, because she was advocating. She from my understanding, she met with nursing students at a university, and they were talking about it.
Well, it might not even be psychedelic. I might be messing that up, but
like that.
Well, West Coast is doing it.
West Coast is?
Yeah.
And what were you saying,
West
Ashley?
Coast.
Well, I've been in some head shops, and they are selling the psychedelic experience legally mushrooms, like with the almond extract and those compounds. And as far as I know, there's no regulation on that, and it's even adds a further element of crazy into this industry right now, because that's, I mean, if you think about it, though, that's supplements in general. There's not a lot of regulation on supplements and beauty products and a lot of things that we're administering orally. That's why they have that FDA not intended to treat, diagnose, or cure anybody. That warning label is just and that's the same thing that we got to use on hemp or mushrooms. Just putting those few warning labels and those few like key statements on there kind of gets you out of the loop for all of that. And there's really nobody coming around and testing these products except for us, self-regulation, that third-party lab testing.
Gotcha. Okay.
Crazy.
Right. You got that right. We had
I know a quick comment there, but I know that mental health therapists that are involved with veterans are in Wisconsin are starting to recommend it for vets.
And there's some
similar to the way Lydia's Law.
There's some very mainstream. I don't know if you guys know Michael Pollan, who's written a bunch of books about food and is a widely known speaker and author. He's on board with psilocybin and that is a food and as therapy too. So it's something that it's sort of behind the curve from cannabis, but it's coming, and I think that it should follow the same path. It gets more and more legal. It needs some regulation at the beginning, and then as the industry matures, then you'll know as people that create it what to put on your packaging and how the insurance legislation liability concerns will guide how you market your products, and that's how it should be.
We got an alert. Is that a drug dog over there, Dustin?
I don't think law enforcement always knows how to enforce that either. They don't understand all the intricacies of Delta 8, Delta 10, and extracts, and and that might get cleaned up a little bit with this Farm Bill amendment that's going to close the loophole on Delta 8, I believe. I don't know the details of it, but it's part of the current Farm Bill that's being considered. So I don't know if that'll affect all of you, but there's what people do, what they try, what they discover, what they remember, and then there's the government reaction to it and the market reaction to it. And that's kind of what we're in the middle of right now.
Sure. I know a lot of folks are definitely trying it. There seems to be some kind of political play there, and it's interesting to see how that's going to shake out because, that's a very hot topic at the moment. It would definitely affect a lot of the folks that we see across the state. We've kind of hit that one at length at the moment. We had a couple questions that popped up for does anyone specifically have any lessons that Wisconsin could learn from other states that have already legalized cannabis? Anybody like to answer that one?
I missed that.
Like just something we could take away from other states that have legalized that we could learn when we're working on legalizing cannabis in Wisconsin.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, Michigan, you got the caretaker system, so it allows to grow your own or at least have that privilege to grow your own with whatever permit is available, like the medical cards. That right there it increases competition, which would keep the prices more stable because more people would be doing it as long as it's regulated in a form or fashion, but to avoid this whole monopoly, you gotta open the doors for other people to grow. So the caretaker system is actually a really good idea. But then you have other states like Colorado and California where they regulate the milligrams per unit of product that's on the shelf, which is fair, but then again, some people might need 500 milligrams or something, of oil, and they can only get that in one dose or one unit in California as opposed to like Colorado where you can only get 100 milligrams. So you have to spend more money and buy more products.
Yeah, it's when we come to that topic, we've got a couple of comments popping up here about plants per person to grow. Do we have a consensus on how many we think is a fair number? Oh, speaking of growing, Marcus is in the house. What's going on, Marcus?
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
Good. Marcus, for those who don't know, is a hemp farmer and activist in the state of Wisconsin. And he sits in at a lot of fun hearings out in D.C. as well. He's a busy man. Appreciate you joining the show. Marcus, we were just touching base on we had a couple questions about what we could take away from other states that have legalized cannabis and that we should maybe consider for when we're looking at legalizing here. Did you have anything on the top of your head that you'd like to add with that? I know you've seen a few. Didn't you tell me once your most favorite way to like legally purchase cannabis? Wasn't it in like DC or something, somewhere with a tablet?
Yeah. So originally DC was like basically gifting. So you had to gift it, and then they would do different things where like people would have really like high-falutin 3-course meals, and then you could with the charge would be like you get to be a part of the meal as well, and then afterwards you get to consume your cannabis. But yeah, in DC, yeah, I just go in, give my card. It's like a hemp company, but it's also a cannabis company too. And then, yeah, I just go on a tablet and pick whatever I want, and it's there. And you can sit there and puff with them all day. I walked in one time to their shop just to grab something, and they had like Cannabis 101 night where they had like a dab station and an edible station and a flower station, and then they taught you how to roll joints. And I thought it was pretty cool. And I was like, you guys do this every night? They're like, no, once a month. It's like $15. Get in, have whatever you want. They have like really nice couches too. And so it's just, I don't know. Out of all the states I've been to, I really like that one. Washington State had some pretty good prices, but yeah, all in all,
could we get something like that set up over at the farm, Bubbles? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean,
have a little teach and cheech night. I'm on a roll. I should just shut this down now. This is just
Where's your farm located, Marcus?
Oop.
Oh, I was asking Marcus a question. Where his farm's located? And what region down to?
Northeast.
Oh, okay. All right.
He's when we were, and then shoot, what were we talking right? Oh, plants to grow for personal grow. What is your guys' take? I think one of the best numbers I heard, I think it's like 16 or 18, because like 6 to grow, 6 that would be in pre-stage grow, your early stages, and then in case something happens. So are we kind of all in agreement that it shouldn't be too limited of a personal grow system? Or do you guys see any negative connotations that frequently pop up with the personal grow? I guess I'm not too familiarized with it in legal states, if any of you guys are.
Well,
is there currently any law about that?
Not in Wisconsin.
No, there's no grow. Like, it's all covered under the hemp or the farm bill.
In any other states where it's legal, are there numbers for that?
Yeah. So like 12 is common. 22 has been another number that's been thrown out there. But here's the thing: like, there's 3 stages, and you got the seedling stage, vegetation stage, and the flowering stage. So it depends if you're going to grow indoor or outdoor. Someone that knows how to grow could yield like 60 pounds. No, well, they could probably yield 50, 60 pounds off of a dozen plants, but your average grower is, maybe a pound per plant, if that. If it's indoor, you get like a pound per light. So then now you're going to increase your energy costs too if you want to run a bunch of lights. You only really need to run like 2 lights under 6 plants.
I suppose you don't have to grow them absurdly large to have a hefty harvest.
Because the average out there is, for every 1,000 watts of light, you generate about a pound or more, if you know what you're doing.
Sure. And don't you guys think it'd be a pretty cool? I feel like if it were to be done the correct way, so like maybe this would be a question for like Ashley and Kelly with DNA hemp. Like, obviously this is probably a ways out, but let's say legalization goes through, personal grow is a thing. I mean, you would hope that there'd be like a unique opportunity for you guys too to like educate consumers, and I would think that's something that you'd want to be a part of. Like I feel like that's one of the really neat things about cannabis is I feel like it's like a bring you together plant, where I feel like a lot of things are kind of like hush hush. But is that something that you guys, like, let's just say legalization happens, home grows the thing, is that something that you'd want to maybe look into as far as down the road? Is that a goal? Or
I mean, we're doing it right now, Bobby Beans.
Right? No, I get that. But I just meant like sharing the knowledge to, like, not exactly how to grow like a huge farm, but just for that. I feel like there's going to be a lot of people. I think a lot of people don't realize the difficulty of growing successfully. And I think that would be kind of a cool community thing. I think it'd be a great chance to hear different stories about, like, I don't know what they call them, but like a community grow or that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorite things that we've done is we actually each year select a seedling, and we name her,
Mhm.
and we call her like our traveling like show pony because we'll bring her with us to different farmers markets and events. And it's really cool because we have a lot of repeat customers and people that, we're seeing at the markets every single week,
Mhm.
and they watch her grow and they'll ask questions. They get to see her in different stages,
Oh, that's cool.
connect with the plant. So I feel like for the majority of people have not even ever seen a cannabis plant, live and in person. And it freaks people out. And a lot of people will smell their way to us like I smell from like 5 stalls down. We're like, yes, come through. And especially during harvest season, we have a lot of fun. I get personal joy about like kind of freaking people out or blowing their minds a bit when they see plants. And so it's all about education and piquing their interest and curiosity, getting them to ask questions and be able to connect with nature essentially. And that's what we're hoping to create on our hemp farm is community gardens, a alternative healing space where people can ground down and connect with Mother Nature because we so much take it for granted as it's just normal and usual for us. We're out there every day. But we are under the impression and realization that a lot of people don't have that access. So I would love nothing more than to host people out at the farm where they can come and experience just the energy of the plant medicine, not only just cannabis, but all the other herbs and fungi alike. It's really quite the experience. And those experiences are something people hold on to and they remember and forget and they can connect to. And so that's what I'm hoping to create with DNA is, know your farmer, support local, and get out there and educate yourself.
100%. And it
Well
really,
said, Bubble.
I would say, and there is something to be said about. I like how you guys talk about like the growing naturally through with the sun, that kind of thing. But even naming plants, like there's something to be said for that relationship you have with the plant when you're growing it. And I always struggle with the oh man, we got to harvest it at some point part. But it is like I don't know if it's because you spend that time watching it grow, but I do feel like I just know exactly how it's going to affect me. Like, I don't know. It does feel like there's that little extra connection with the plant. So,
Like a pet.
Yeah, there you go.
Like a pet.
Yep. A pet. That's
Yeah.
A lot of people are like that with house plants. I feel like you name them. They're part of your family. You take care of them. You feed them.
How many times do you check it? All the time. Especially when you first put it in, you're like, did it come up?
Oh, yeah. I'm down there twice a day for sure. Definitely. We got another question that said, seems like there'd be a lot of positivity from legalizations impacting local communities, especially those disproportionately affected by past cannabis laws. How do we ensure the government actually does these things?
Sorting, like
elect the right people to public office.
Right.
Well, part of the issue too is tying legalization of cannabis with all of the terrible things that have happened since in particular the early 70s with over incarceration of certain populations and the effect that has on the economy and on families and on mental health, that all of these things tie together. And we know that from, I think it was Nixon's papers from the early 70s, that part of the intent, if not all the intent of the war on drugs was to be opposed to certain populations, the African American population community and hippies too. So if you bring it all together, it's not just about plant freedom, which it should be. That's sufficient. But if you add on all the other effects that so-called war on drugs has had, which is really a war on people, you can make a convincing case and understand why it's so important that this should be legalized.
I think that's a great take, and I think that is part of the pitch that you get from a lot of politicians is how this is. Somebody got a microwave that's like something they got to check in their microwave. I feel like we got a dinger.
I don't know what it is, you guys.
Oh, sunshine! I should have known. It's probably the cow alarm, or there's like an animal on the loose. But no, I feel like a lot of times the politicians will bring up like the taxes that it brings with and everything, but then you also hear a lot of horror stories about places that have legalized and where is the money actually going. So I think that's just got to be something that is integral in the setting up of, okay, the money that's raised, how is it going to be tracked? Where is it actually going to? And how do we make sure it goes to where we say it's going to go? Right? Is that too much to ask for when it comes to policy?
Yeah, apparently it is. To be honest with you.
Sounds like MPS right now in Milwaukee.
Where's the money from? Yeah, exactly. Where's the tax money that goes to Milwaukee Public Schools? Where has that gone? Where's the Social Security money that people have been paying into for 80 years or whatever? It's better. I would think that the more states legalize, that the taxes on it will go down because people will be comparing prices across state borders, kind of like they are now. Mm-hmm. But right now, there's not enough states to make it a market in terms of fighting over that. So hopefully that's the case, and there's some accountability with that. But if any other program is taken as an example, it's just unlikely because the general public doesn't pay enough attention to where that money gets spent. Really.
I agree. And I think, like you brought up, you see the contrast difference. I'm surprised how many people in the Milwaukee, Madison area still drive to the UP because the product pricing and the taxing is so much different than Illinois. I don't know. I think, that's something that we got to watch and make sure that we do our best to ensure that it's fair and equitable when we're setting up these laws and the tax amounts and that kind of thing.
I have a comment on that. How do you protect Wisconsin's farmers in general from out-of-state competition that wants to get involved and take over Wisconsin's industry? Because when I discuss this with other people, I refer to it as THC equity. Other states that have legal cannabis, they have THC equity built up to where they could literally start franchising overnight, and spread across territory in other states. And Wisconsin's not in a position to handle that right now because
I've been told from people out west, Dustin, for every $1 we plan on spending, that they'll spend $7 to outcompete us.
Exactly, because California's products actually have been undercutting Wisconsin homegrown, Wisconsin farmers' products throughout the state, and it's not exclusive to dispensaries. This is gas stations, grocery stores. Farmers markets right now are the gold mine for our farmers in Wisconsin. But the competition against states like California, where they could produce millions of units of a particular product at half the wholesale value or half of the production value of Wisconsin farmers. And in addition to that, there's all these mass land grabs right now in agriculture. So, there's a lot of people playing this industry, and they're looking to undercut everybody.
Well, and that's a political question too, really. If you look at how the money comes back to farmers through the Farm Bill, most of it goes to corporate farmers, and since it comes in Wisconsin down through county level, that it's the biggest farms in the county because they're spending the most amount of money on politicians. That's probably the case anywhere where it's legal too. The big players take their profits and invest it in politicians, and then the grant money or the support money or the subsidies or the carve outs or all the different ways they can reward donors is what happens. So would you want the industry to be part of the Farm Bill or not? Or, and even when we were talking earlier about what happens when it's legal and, sharing with people and teaching them how to grow, the big garden center type, they'll get involved in that too and leverage that in a way. Young's Garden Center, they'll have that too, and so it'll be a fight about marketing the product and advertising the product as something special and local and different from what's being sold commercially and everywhere else, in a way that's not really the case now. But I think that's the future of it.
Yeah, it's like the gold rush, where the people that made the most money were the ones selling the shovels and the picks.
But the government answers to the parties, which answer to their donors, and that's the cycle that individual growers and farmers don't want to get involved in, because what will end up happening is the same thing with corn. Most of the corn grown in the United States is grown to make either feed or high fructose corn syrup, which is poison, basically. So I don't know if there's an allegory or analogy for that and hemp growing, but I would assume that especially the folks on the call right now want to preserve the special nature of what they're growing and where they're growing it, and monopolize, or not monopolize, but have an advantage locally. But there'll be a lot of money spent against that to make it commercially. So there's like a McDonald's of hemp. There's every brand you can think of that's everywhere. You don't like cigarette brands, and I don't think anyone.
Yeah, and we've talked very heavily about that and about how Wisconsin needs to get caught up on bringing genetics from all over the world into Wisconsin so we can have that genetic base to be able to compete with these people from the West, for sure.
And real quick, this kind of ties in a little bit to what the subject we're on, but John O is asking with his understanding of THCA flower and talking cutting prices, do you guys feel that THCA flower is cutting into the prices of legal states flower?
I'll say something. I think it is. I think it's cutting into their profit share, and that's why they're pushing back so hard. But the interesting thing is, like, when the Farm Bill moves forward and let's say they've removed THCA, if you have a state-run program that allows you to produce THCA still, you'll be able to distribute to all 50 states potentially, where the rest of us won't be able to grow it, and they'll be able to monopolize what we do. It's scary.
That is interesting.
Well, and then you still have the West Coast surplus of all from the merge going back to 2016. You had the black market merging into the recreational market, and so people were growing like crazy out in West Coast back prior to 2017, and there's so much out there, but it was locked because it couldn't go anywhere. So the only way to access it is people would have to come up to the farms directly instead of shipping it out to dispensaries across the country. And, so the prices have dropped per pound over the last few years substantially, to the point where it's not even worth growing anymore in the West Coast because of the cost of land and resources. And so it's only a matter of time that I think it's going to balance out, because the cost, in order to make it worth anything right now in the market per pound, I mean, you still have to consider how you're going to generate energy to run indoor grow operations to be able to cycle your harvest and your yield enough to keep a dispensary operating. If that makes sense,
And it ties into, I think it also ties into, like, let's say it goes legal and you want to do a grow, wherever it may be. I feel like like you said, the price of land seems to go up when there's the farm use involved in the potential with the land. But then also you've got, if you want to do an indoor grow, you got to have a lot of equipment to get that indoor grow going and to keep it going. It's a big investment, and then especially with the banking issues that are out there, it's got to be a nightmare.
I mean, maybe somebody else knows more right now about what's the average amount of pounds that are being sold through dispensaries monthly. You take that into consideration and you use that as kind of your general figure and how much product you need to grow on a monthly basis for indoors. And, again, like energy, a 40 lighter back in 2017 using HPS bulbs would cost you 10 grand a month, but that kept the prices high. Pounds back then were going for $2-3 grand.
Jill says that is a great point. Do you guys have any ideas on how we protect the farmers? I would love to buy cannabis at a farmer's market. That's been I think we'd all probably share that vision. But the first thing that comes to my mind is just kind of getting that voice of them together.
Well, I don't know. Like, so you've seen in our bills now that they've written, whether it's medical or for rec, like certain amount of plants you can grow. I don't know. I think the industry can be protected for the farmer. Like they're talking about 5 or 10 years, you got to live here and show where the income comes from. I think if it's set out right from the beginning, we have an opportunity to do something the rest of the country didn't do. And they kind of messed up in that process. But it all comes down to that social equity piece. And a lot of these social equity pieces in our bills are written for a certain ethnicity when it should be written for everybody. If you're under a certain dollar amount, you should qualify to be in those social equity programs. It shouldn't be based off of race. And I'll leave it at that.
Respectful. We've got, where did this go here? How can cannabis and hemp industries promote environmentally sustainable practices?
Rejuvenative gardening or farming practices. I know a company, I'll just name it Canavera. They're they're known for rejuvenative farming practices, and they run chickens, a lot of chickens too. But they make their own compost. They make hugelkultur beds. The best way to describe a hugelkultur bed is basically like, imagine a lasagna, but it's all compost, but different layers, starting from like hardwood sticks to leaves, whatever. Just look it up, and and it saves a lot of those practices save a lot of money for farmers. Even fermenting your own green juice. It's as simple as, collect all your weeds and greens, grass clippings, and etc. Whatever. And you just throw it in a barrel and seal it for a couple of weeks. It smells very foul, but the plants love it, and it lowers your pH in your soil. So there's a lot of practices like that that Canavera has been using for years now, and that is all organic. And from my understanding, they are certified organic. So there's a lot people can do. Just do research, or reach out to us. We can always help you out, But yeah, there's a lot of ways, home remedies you can put together to make it worthwhile, and you don't have to go spend a fortune on fertilizer solutions.
I can say, after having no idea what I was doing getting into growing, other than I just wanted to figure it out. I didn't want to be like the best. I just want to learn more about the plant. And there's a ton of resources, but it's really hard to know exactly for your specific plant, the genetics, so on and so forth. But man, I tell you what, going from trying to figure out what nutrients to give the thing to living soil, that was beautiful. And it just makes sense. So there are a lot of things to be learned out there, if you will. But going back to questions that we got popping up, is there anything that we can do that any tribes could do in the state of Wisconsin similar to Minnesota with legalization? I believe the answer is no, but I don't know for sure.
So I can contest that a little bit. So yes and no. So like the Minnesota has some different rules with a few of their tribes. Some of the tribes are open and some of them are closed. Like the Red Lake Reservation I work with, they're a closed reservation. They've never signed a treaty with the U.S. government, so they're not bound to actually answer to anything that they do. Where if you've ever taken money and signed treaties with the U.S. government, you're open and the DEA can come in and force on your property.
And the FBI took him out.
Oh,
shouldn't have been talking shit. No,
Whatever he was going to say must have been very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can't let him say that.
So I mean, I can go in a little bit for Phil. Is he coming back here?
So I guess,
but yeah, there's from what he was saying. Certain territories are, I guess, have a different level of immunity protection from federal enforcement, depending on how the tribe is set up. Because I've been when I was working out in the West Coast, in this industry, there were tribes out there that were the same way, and they if they had issues, they would seek out contractors as opposed to federal agencies. But anyways, I don't know if Phil caught any of that. Sounds like he's
Are you
back
okay,
here.
Phil? Is this a real Phil or is this a Phil?
I'm alive. Sorry.
All right. Phil, if you want to
So,
pick up where
Phil,
you were,
I was just
think
kind of
Marcus
filling
did.
in for Phil for a minute there, but I was basically just summarizing how like the tribe, a lot of the tribal territories have different rules that may or may not protect them from federal oversight.
Yeah, some tribes are open and some tribes are closed across the country. That's where the issue kicks in. If you're an open reservation line where you can't close it in an issue of emergency, then you're considered open, and the feds can actually come in and regulate and do whatever they want. If you're a closed tribe, they actually have to go to tribal council and get permission to come talk to you as an enterprise. So that's where the kicker comes in, is all of our tribes in Wisconsin have signed a treaty with the U.S. government, are considered open.
Gotcha. Marcus, you had something?
That's why in 2014, the feds kicked in the door of that tribe up above Green Bay and raided all their stuff they were growing, because they're considered an open reservation.
So really, it was 2015. There was the Menominee. And so when we look at the laws here in Wisconsin, since it's a public law 280 state, basically criminal civil jurisdiction reverts back to the state itself. But the kicker about it is that Menominee was written out of that law because the feds were planning to terminate us as a federally recognized tribe in the 50s. And it didn't go into effect until the 60s. The issue that we had was that we had non-natives that we consulted with that were handling the hemp. And that's what gave the feds to say, oh, this tribe is not utilizing their sovereignty. So we're going to raid them on it. And that's kind of how that happened. But when we look at the future of Wisconsin, Menominee still holds more power than the rest of the tribes in this state for utilizing our sovereignty and developing a vertically integrated system that produces cannabis for medicinal purposes.
So it was simply because that's crazy. Simply because who you consult with, they can the government can find a way to. Bill, how do we get you into office, man?
Preach.
We need somebody like Phil.
Government wants something from you, they will find a way to do it, or some justification to do it, or they'll even break their own laws. To go off topic, the current persecution of the journalist publisher Julian Assange is a perfect example of that. They don't have any legitimate legal right to be persecuting him for simply revealing war crimes, but they've done it, and they have judges that will agree with them, and now they got the whole British government agreeing with them. So that's just another example of the government is not bound by their own laws.
Fair enough.
The worst part about it, Beans, even if we tried to do something after 2001, they would just go Patriot Act and find a way to fuck with our businesses. I'll say it.
Yeah, that's when they play the whole national security card with the Patriot Act and warrantless surveillance, which has been going on and off and on since.
And now it's legalized. The last version of the FISA Section 702 that passed exempted Congress from having to have subpoenas or not.
Okay, so what's the status of it now?
It's right now they don't need a subpoena for anybody in the country to spy on you, except for Congress. Who they do need a subpoena for.
Well, it's interesting because I have a letter I'll send you after this meeting here. But there's the whole thing with the whole wireless surveillance. Now, like, how does that apply with Facebook and social media in general? Because you can publicly make comments, especially on like journalist sites, right? That's all free to explore for anybody.
Right. They can totally spy on that. That's not even really what I mean. The FISA stuff, the warrantless surveillance covers like things that you wouldn't expect ever to be public, actual phone calls, text messages, etc. And there's been backdoors revealed by hackers, built right into Google, built right into Android, so that the CIA doesn't even have to make a request of Google to do it. They're just automatically being fed information, the same allegation.
That's interesting. So if you do you remember the San Bernardino, we'll call it the terrorist attack because that's what the media was portraying back several years ago, 5-6 years ago. That event became the first event where the FBI took the evidence, phones, and they were Apple phones, but they hacked into it, but they had to send them to Israel. And Israel had hackers that could get into it. But that's the only time we've ever heard that happening. So
because
it's
they
like
have to do that. Apple actually had, no matter how you feel about them, they've been better about security than Android has.
Oh yeah, definitely. I always recommend Apple. If it's an American company, yeah.
I'd still be suspicious because all it takes is one link in the whole chain of communication, the recipient of an email or a text message or whatever, to be not secure on their end.
Right.
Even if you use something like Proton Mail, which is secure email from Switzerland, I think, if you send that to somebody's Gmail account, well, it's not useless what you did, but there's so many different ways they can get in at different angles that, it's just not safe.
Well, and
snail mail is secure.
I love Google, but I did get the shit scared out of me when some stuff went down with an old situation I was a part of, where I forwarded some stuff to my personal email so I'd have it just as backup, and just it wasn't anything like super important or anything, but I just wanted to have these couple documents, right? And so I sent it to my personal email, and within 2 hours, it was like they never existed, and I thought I was losing my mind. But we'll just kind of leave it at that. It was interesting for sure.
But you guys just wait. It just hit the news that Apple partnered now with the Chat GTP for artificial intelligence.
Oh, great. That's all we need.
They're really doubling down on this. So.
AI is...
Google,
you don't even need a lawyer anymore. Just Google, use AI. You don't even need a lawyer anymore these days.
Something to think about that's scary, guys. Like, let's say the feds legalize this thing, right? What's stopping the feds that following spring of just saying, you know what? All the cannabis and hemp businesses in the country, we're auditing every single one of you. What's stopping the IRS from doing that? The IRS took down Al Capone. I mean, if they can't get anything on you, they're going to send the IRS after you.
They basically the arc of the whole thing.
License and insured. Bring it.
The big money, the people that have a lot of money, the big corporations and lobbies control both parties of government. So it won't be legal nationally until the people that are paying for the politicians on both sides into the parties have a way of controlling it. So there may be a window, and I hate to sound cynical or pessimistic. This is just how other things have gone. There'll be a window of time where it's legal and small operators could maybe do well. But at that point, once it's legal, the biggest operators will be controlling the legislation, the federal legislation about it, probably the state legislation too, to their advantage. And that's what happened to the Farm Bill over the last 50 years. There used to be farmers who were growing stuff, taking it to market, selling it places. And now it's completely controlled by corporate agriculture to the point where small farmers, and this will apply to hemp farmers at some point, probably, hopefully not, but probably, will be at a disadvantage too, fighting against Monsanto. Think about what a company like Monsanto getting involved in hemp growing, fertilizer, seed, etc. Right now, and there's an actual federal law that says that Monsanto seed gets in your farm, and you accidentally grow it, just because it blew over from the other field, that Monsanto can sue you. And the incentive of that is
I've heard about
Monsanto seed. So, and it's just terrible, but that's what I fear for the hemp industry, for the cannabis industry, is that once it gets over the hump of being legal federally, that it'll just flow pretty quickly into that sort of tyrannical corporate oligarchy, or however you want to characterize it, and be still very difficult, legal, but very difficult for independent operators to compete.
I mean, you could compare that to like
and Cargill. They might be the ones holding the EPA up to not tell us what we can spray on hemp, so we can move things forward in every level.
Always follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got another comment on here. Do you feel that Agard's bill is too open? Do we need to start a medical bill that makes sense, not Voss?
Well,
that cuts straight to the medical
I think
part.
the bill makes sense, but until we know what the farm bills happen, our legislatures aren't going to move on anything. They're waiting for the guidance so they can just say, hey, well, the farm bill says you can do this. I really feel that way.
Yeah, I agree with Phil, but we also need to get more clarity on what the Wisconsin constitutional or what the Wisconsin Constitution says about possessing a drug with doctor's permission.
Because Minnesota,
so in other words,
for saying in their state constitution, you should be able to grow your plants at home.
So
right.
Wisconsin already has laws on the books saying as long as you have a medical prescription, you can carry cannabis, and it's done before in various different court cases. But I mean, the law.
I'm well aware of that.
It's just how are we going to get it? And I think Wisconsin should not wait for the farm bill, and they should just push forward on states' rights like everybody else.
Right.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah, because like, what's the point of creating a medical bill like Voss, where he wants to literally expand government with the money that it comes from? But at the end of the day, medical should be exempt for patients.
Just and something to think about, Dustin, is like, so the UW pharmaceutical department, their pharmacy department, like that trains them at the college, like they're big supporters behind this and they want to see it move forward. But if it's not medical, where it states you have to have a pharmacist on hand to be able to give out your prescription, they're not.
But that would be under federal, though. That would be under federal. You know what I'm saying? Because because you have the AMA, American Medical Association, and the doctors in Wisconsin and across the country don't even recognize foreign medical research unless it's recognized by the AMA. Okay, so with the Wisconsin Constitution exemption, how do we broadcast that, educate it, make it known? Because that's what it boils down to, and it mirrors Lydia's Law or Act 4. If you just abide by that alone, you're safe. Now, as far as the whole growing in comparison correlation with Minnesota, now that's something that we got to figure out. How can we grow and have it? Is there something in the Wisconsin Constitution? Sorry about Cooper here. Is there something in Wisconsin's Constitution that would work?
Well, and then so just going back real quick to Jill here with about the medical only. Part of the reason, or part of my understanding, or at least like what I've told myself, again, I'm not by any means an expert on anything, especially compared to a lot of you guys, the time you guys been into this, but isn't part of the medical first because of, I guess it'd be similar to like what you're talking with the THC equity, where there's gonna, otherwise if you open the full door for legalization, now granted we know that's not just gonna be like, oh, it's legal, boom, you open them the next day, but would there be enough supply to keep up with the full legalization? Or
well, when you think of medical cannabis, everybody thinks of just a regular dispensary. You're gonna go there, you show them your medical card, you might get it might cost less at the cash register because you get that medical tax exemption. But at the end of the day, if you look at the big picture, what is any other medical drug? How do you get it? Get a prescription. Where do you go and pick it up? Okay. So at the end of the day, if it ends up in the pharmacies, it's going to be a niche market. It's not always going to be, tinctures. Okay. It would also include pills. But there's so many other products out there that could be an ointment. So where is this going to end, and who are those companies that are going to create those products? This is where branding, creating new products for Wisconsin companies is more important than the legislation in general. Use your mind, create new products. You got to come up with something because it's not going to be exclusive to tinctures, you know, and getting those into pharmacies is going to be the end game realistically if it's going to be just like any other medical product. How do you compete with conventional healthcare? You can't beat them, you got to join them, right? I guess. So, you know, at the end of the day, is it or is it not going to be merged with traditional or conventional healthcare?
If I had to guess, I think the money's on the side of merging. Because if you look at the rest of the medicine that we consume for whatever reason, it's all produced by very big producers and very few of them.
Right.
So that's the worst case scenario, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
once it becomes legal for whatever reason, but in specific for medicine, that will probably be because the money from big pharma is ready to control it, and they won't, like somebody in the comments said something about there'll always be black market cannabis, which is probably true, but they will be enforcing regulations against small producers at the behest of the big producers, and that will be legal. And that's how they will approach it, to make it seem like it's, you know, for the same reason that you it's hard to get away with making your own alcohol at home too, you know, at least or and sell it.
Right.
They'll want the tax money. They'll want the control over it because their sponsors are the corporations who produce the most of it. I mean, it's a fight worth fighting. Obviously, I'm with you.
It can be done. How bad do you want it?
Yeah.
Why do we want to legalize? Honestly,
yeah,
like why do we want to legalize? They can get DA.
Well, I think that's a fair question.
Is it because of the farmers? Is it because of our right to grow? Like, let's ask ourselves, like, why are we pushing for legal cannabis so much? Why are people going across the borders when they can get stuff that psychedelic effects right here? Is it for the medicinal purposes? Because that's all in hemp. If people just understood this plant a little bit better and we could come together, united force about research dollars for clinical studies, I think that the science would just speak for itself.
No, I agree with you. I purchased from my local black market person, and I don't pay any tax on it, and the money goes right into that person's pocket, and I don't know exactly where they get it from, but I know that it is what it's supposed to be because I'm a
it's good.
Educated.
Trust your local farmer.
Yeah, well, yeah, the farmer isn't the guy, you know, but nonetheless, I prefer the black market to be in play. I mean, I'm offended by the idea that it's illegal, but what comes along with being legal might make it the whole situation a lot worse for everybody. I don't know.
Yeah. It was eye-opening to go to Madison and see literally a dispensary on every corner, maybe several on one street alone. And you go and talk to those shop owners, and they want nothing to do with legalization. They're like, oh, no, I don't have to pay a dispensary fee. We are not charged outrageous taxes, and we don't have quite as near as many regulations as we would for medicinal. And they had 30 to 40 different strains of the THCA there that is selling off, but farmers can't grow it in Wisconsin. Remember that. Farmers cannot grow it right now.
Which is why THCA is in jeopardy with that amendment to the Farm Bill, right? That's why, because the government would rather have its hands all over everything.
And the banking issue too.
And the banking industry, right?
So if we do legalize it, I feel like we're just unfurling even more chaos for regulation and big corporation and big pharma just to come right in. It's opening the gateways. I don't know, guys.
So Bobby, you got to change this all up. It can't be let's legalize Wisconsin anymore. We've agreed. That's a bad idea.
Well, yeah, the Farm Bill came out. The good thing that was the leverage that Wisconsin has against the other states is that the Farm Bill was originally developed here. Was part of it for the hemp stuff, you know, and that's bipartisan support. Both Tammy Baldwin and Ron Johnson they're not gonna allow that to change.
So, and
So
I think
that,
the
but
biggest,
we'll see. I mean, but like
I don't know.
there's people pushing for a change on it, and if it affects Wisconsin, that's going to be a problem in DC.
and the main reason I got into this was being on the retail side of things for hemp, and then realizing where is this stuff actually coming from, and how does nobody know where it's actually coming from or what it actually is?
It's
What's
not
up?
Wisconsin, I'll tell you
I
what.
know. I know. It's interesting out there, folks. It definitely helps.
I'll tell you, Beans. I'm importing 150 pounds of THCA a month that I move through my dispensary.
150 pounds?
Importing it.
Yes.
Freeze
I
a
only
week.
I
We have it at the farmers markets, and people still, I hear every single day, every single time we're there, that they still go across the border to get it.
Yes.
It's marketing. It's all based on marketing. Wisconsin has not. Wisconsin is.
I'm expected to, not only do I have to farm a superior product, now I have to be an expert at marketing, advertising, PR, sales, not to mention all the other business nuances in order to run an LLC, being licensed and insured. It's absolutely asinine. Farmers just want to farm. People should just be able to grow their own, point blank and period.
Right. Because all the other states had the politicians advertise the legalization, and then they had the media talk about it and blow it up. And then the media went to all the dispensaries and said, hey, this place is going to have their grand opening for legal recreational marijuana. Let's put it on national news. And it goes viral. And they intentionally made it go viral to where it created this I don't know, stigma in a way, or the perception of everybody just goes to Illinois or Michigan if you live in Wisconsin. Instead of just like, go talk to the local dispensaries. Go talk to
Bobby Beans. He's
go talk to Bobby Beans, right?
Wisconsin, but Higher Love sponsors them.
Yeah,
absolutely. Exactly. Go talk to Bobby Beans. He can be like, go there if you're looking for that. Go there.
But and I know it's still an illegal substance, but that also rubs me the wrong way. That a lot of THCA, if you get popped with it, it's going to come back hot. So, I have partial issue with that, but that's when I was selling it and trying to tell people, yeah, no, it's hemp, you're good, but you're not good. Well, then what is it? I understand where you're at, and I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know what strain it is. It's pretty funky out there. I like seeing where it was grown, seeing what pesticides it was sprayed with, and having a nice selection. And I hope that we can do that in Wisconsin one day. We'll have to see how things shake out.
When hopefully whatever happens, the home grow aspect of it is generous and can be worked with. I mean, just for some perspective, you can make 200 gallons of wine per year per adult in the house. And that's a lot of wine. That's 1,000 bottles of wine, which is, so whatever the corresponding amount of whatever that is, that should be the standard. Don't give that up in any I wouldn't give that up in any legislation as a trade-off for legalization when they're going to reduce the home growing aspect of it. No, because that's where the real freedom is, and that's important to maintain that, I think.
Yeah, that's very interesting about the wine analogy. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
You give me 21
in Wisconsin,
at home, we're going to produce 150 pounds a year. Do the math.
Well, I mean, so like with the whole wine thing, you don't have to have a license to grow up to 200 pounds or 200 gallons. I mean,
correct.
Wow. Correct. Okay. Well, let's start infusing more hemp wine. Why not? Go for it.
I make wine every year.
I know some vineyard farmers.
I'm using that as an analogy. As oppressive as the alcohol industry is, right? Big alcohol, they still allow for that amount of making it at home.
What's for moonshine?
Well, moonshine's not legal. It's not legal to distill anything at home. It's wine and beer, and I don't know if there's a separate number of gallons for beer or not. But to have a distillery, you have to have a license, and that's because of taxes.
What about for like making a homemade isopropyl?
I have no idea.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's still a lot of hemp cannabis manufacturers that are in need for alcohol for extraction purposes. And, food grade or, moonshine.
The excise tax is $37 a gallon right now.
It's being used for manufacturing. It's not being used for consumption or tavern league, distribution. So is that something that's unchecked right now with the legislator? That might be something to look into. Let's look into that.
I'm just looking at it as an analogy, to make sure.
Right. No, but it makes sense because I immediately was thinking of
it's a cultural thing then too, right? I think probably that law with wine and beer came up because the original settlers, non-native settlers of Wisconsin were people that made wine and beer. So there was a big carve out for them because, and maybe that's going to fail because there's not as much of that cultural aspect to large blocks of voters or whatever. Maybe there is, but
yeah, the wine thing's definitely protected by the First Amendment because then you got religious aspects as well with it for consumption.
And there's no church that makes their own. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's no church that I'm aware of that makes their own wine because people are really. We're getting off subject a little bit here. Yeah. But people that go to church are very particular about their communion wine. So usually they use something very Mogen David, Manischewitz, something like that, because they don't want people having what taste one week and then taste funny the next week, and then they're going to another church.
Right.
The market doesn't work.
Sorry, yeah, we got a little off topic there, but.
Shout out to Mogen David on that one. I'm trying to think of if there's anything else you wanted to discuss on tonight's run of the round table. I've been asking the questions, so is there anything else that you guys would like to discuss with the group we've got this evening?
Nobody's even talked about fiber or grain.
That's true, Phil.
That aspect of farming, if this is Wisconsin agriculture.
I can speak on a little bit on genetics. We do have Wisconsin does have a huge genetic deficiency. We don't have quality genetics in abundance in the state. So you got to go out of state to get it. At least order it online, and it's pricey. It's very expensive.
So
especially
I've been working with a land grant university, college nomination, same one that was doing research in 2015 underneath the 2014 Farm Bill, and we've been developing a cultivar fiber for the past 5 years, past last 2 tests. So now we're looking at the next 3 years, trying to figure out characteristics that we're looking at. But that's for the college to utilize to share with hemp farmers in Wisconsin once the fiber market's there for Wisconsin hemp farmers who are growing for fiber. I was one of the only fiber growers in the last year of the Wisconsin hemp grow. I asked specifically too, I'm like, that's not true. There has to be some other people who are growing fiber because I know there's other people that are growing for fiber. They're like, no, like dual purpose, like grain and fiber. Yeah. But you're the only fiber grower that's growing this year. And I had like six genetics that I was testing out.
What are you doing with your fiber?
So right now it's strictly just breeding. And then what I have for fiber, we're giving it to the high school on Menominee to make baskets out of, because the big thing is really re-education of the community on hemp. For the longest time, everyone's, reefer madness, just say no. We have these 87 years deficiency of research and also education. And so really we're re-educating everybody. But I mean, tribes have always used hemp. I wouldn't say that hemp has always been here, but I think we traded it through the trade routes, either coming up from Chile or coming up from California. And that's kind of, Menominee is the Algonquin tribe. We have different artifacts and different museums that are made from hemp. So it's really about teaching that piece. I think, at least just coming from a tribal or indigenous perspective, that's what we're trying to do in our communities, is really re-education and trying to get people to be more accepting of it. That's why I grew my hemp in an open field next to a highway for the first couple of years in 2020, because I wanted the community to interact with the hemp and not feel so scared of it. I think that's really what it came down to. And once everyone really saw the benefit of what it could do and how it was growing throughout the whole year, they're like, wow, this is an amazing plant. I'm like, yes, it is. So
Awesome.
I've seen it just in the last few years, the change in the community. I mean, we just voted to pass medical cannabis on the books and amend it and actually make the whole process for it to actually happen. We're putting through our hemp codes right now to the USDA, something that I didn't really want when we were advocating for in 2018, but I knew Republicans would never give tribes full sovereignty. So we pushed it for more having it underneath the USDA, but tribes being able to regulate it on their terms, and the USDA just giving the licenses or approving the plans. So, but yeah, grain and fiber. I mean, the future of it, I mean, I've seen hemp you can burn and pull propane and rocket fuel off of. You can.
Right.
Yeah, there's a company working on batteries. I heard rumors that Duracell is already involved with trying to create hemp batteries.
And so they're
Working with companies up in Michigan.
Isn't there somewhere in Wisconsin that was doing converting to hemp battery
Yeah, it's
facility?
by Portage. It's by Portage.
There's farmers in Wisconsin that are being contracted out, from my understanding, to work on this project.
And I think the hemp and fiber, just from like a strictly consumer side of things, I think it's really just comes down to the knowledge and not understanding the many benefits of it, or what that looks like, as far as if it's something you can grow, and then once you got the fiber, does it then do I need some big machinery, or like, so I think it really kind of comes down to education for
the
farmers.
decorticator.
Well,
We're
Is that what they call that thing?
participating in a UW extension program for growing fiber. We got an acre of it in the field this year, and we used a corn planter to drill it down into the ground. It's coming out really well, but the trick here is, what do we do with it when we harvest?
Yeah.
And we asked the UW extension, and after they do their testing and everything, they want to figure out with the soil and pesticide free and the spacing and the growth process. We'll then dispose of it, compost it. What a waste!
Well, we have
across
the state, we have
for a $500 stipend.
We have low bed fluid temp dryers that can keep the grain where it's workable for food grade. But the frustrating thing for me and what we've done in research is, like, we've taken the stalks all the way to Lyngdon basically, and then Lyngdon all the way to carbon fiber. And the U.S. government and the Air Force want more carbon fiber suppliers coming from natural plants, but they won't give us investment because it comes from cannabis, even though it's hemp.
The government. Phil, it all comes back to the damn government.
Literally.
Preach.
Like,
always the problem, never the solution. Always.
2 years ago, we were in the running to get the contract to redo the U.S. Air Force's uniforms. And we finished third in the running for the fiber aspect of it. But they came back and said, well, we're going to put you in third place. You're not getting this award because it comes from cannabis. And it's like, well, how much more can we do? We've refined it to a material you want. We've put it in
restricted
that you could put on a body, and it's still not enough.
Yeah.
So it just blows my mind on that aspect of it. We'll leave it at that.
I guess they don't want you to tell them it's from cannabis. That's what it boils down to, I guess.
It's from the creek behind my house.
But then again, we all want transparency, right? So
that's the frustrating part. Like, we can do it. I think we all know people that can do some form or fashion to, like, move the grain and fiber side of this, but the federal government telling us it's a commodity won't give us the investment or the opportunity to be able to move it forward. And it frustrates me that we do have one tribe in the state that got $15 million from the USDA, and they're planting their joker seed for grain and fiber across in their acreage. But it's like, what's keeping that tribe from planting some cannabis along next to it? I don't know.
Well, the machinery. And so I was a few years ago, I was in talks with this hemp company or fiber company out in, I think it was Montana. And they did textiles. They specialized in textiles, high-end hemp textiles, but also manufacturing equipment, the decorticator. And that piece of equipment, if you want to run commercial fibers, what you need, along with specific types of genetics where you get the thinner stalks. But you're looking at over a $2 million investment alone just for the equipment to be able to run it commercially. Now, if you go back to the olden times, I mean, Wisconsin used to grow hemp back in the 1800s. But it was all done by hand. And you can look up online on ways to break up the bass, I believe it's called, it's the center part of the stalk is what you target. So you got to strip away everything else, and then you break that fiber up that's in the center and turn it into the final product.
Yeah, I've worked with the Amish before around Wisconsin, and they use the old flaxseed technology where it's all done by hand, but they're able to process tons of it. But it takes a community of 30, 40 people to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's all manual labor right now until you can, get this equipment. And that's the hard part. Right now, there's companies out there trying to create it. Why not? It's in high demand. But right now, there's only a few companies that have it. But is it reliable? Because it's kind of like a generation or a regeneration, one variety of a particular piece of technology that
we sold the looms to India where they have cheaper labor.
Yep, and they won't allow them to come back with the technology. It's crazy.
There you go. Uh-huh.
And then what happens to the finances of the farmer who has to go into vast amounts of debt to afford equipment? And there's companies like John Deere with farm equipment that have rules about work on it yourself, and just creates sort of a serfdom in a way of permanent indebtedness. And that can also lead farmers to have to do certain practices they didn't intend on doing originally, but now they're in debt. So they have to do what their debtees, whatever it is, how it has to be done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a few more years yet before we figure out whether these pre-existing decorticators out there are going to actually be reliable, or until like John Deere or a bigger company takes hold of it and starts creating the one, or Milwaukee Tool should do it. There we go. Milwaukee Tool needs to build a decorticator, a portable one that can harvest, 1,000 plants a day or 1,000 stalks a day.
We'll even start low. We'll start low, like 10 a day just to start something. We'll start low.
Low and
run it on the M18 battery.
I was just gonna say M18,
15
M12 in a pinch. Yeah.
Well, I will say this, our grain and fiber farmers right now, most of them are trucking their material either to Wyoming or North Dakota because they have the processing established to be able to do that. So they're just fighting with being able to afford to truck it there and compete with the people that grow it right next to it. And that's where a lot of them are losing on the back end.
Well, what I can tell you is when I set out with whatever we want to call this thing that is Let's Legalize Wisconsin, I was hoping to just really, I felt like I was on a little island of now that I don't work in retail, but I know what cannabis can do for people, what can I do to help educate the people and help get this thing moving? And I think something like this is awesome. Seeing different people across the cannabis realm or cannabis hemp realm in Wisconsin, from politicians to farmers to advocates. Like, I really think like this, what we're doing here might not, be any kind of further big push towards legalization, but I just hope making these connections and getting some people on board. Maybe this is the first podcast they see, or maybe somebody's going to watch this in a week and just go, oh, there's like this many people talking about hemp. What is hemp? Fiber? What's fiber? I think we just got to kind of keep at it, keep the education. I appreciate all you guys, everything you do. If I didn't like you, you wouldn't be here on the podcast with us. So you guys are a certain level of cool in my book. No, I really appreciate you guys. And, You guys all bring up great perspectives. I think we need to keep Phil in the back of our mind, get somebody like Phil, if we can help support him in his efforts to help with this funny political system we find ourselves in. I think we can all agree that seems to be it's weird because like as much as I want legalization, I still am very much afraid of it because we all know this could just be it could be a terrible thing when it gets legalized if it's not done properly. So that's all I've got. I appreciate you guys and your time. And this was really cool.
Thanks.
Love you, Bobby Beans. Thank you for fighting the good fight, man. Your heart is in the right place, and that is super admirable.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. I hope everybody has a great night, and we'll catch y'all later.
Good night, everyone.